Aha! And so, without further ado, let's all welcome back from the great country of New Zealand, which will never be part of the United States, our very own Yael.
Yay. Hi, everybody. It's great to see you all. There's been so many Saturday nights when I've been like, should I get up on Sunday at 3 a.m. and do this? And because my Sunday, your Saturday was my Sunday at at 4 a.m. So I'm sorry I didn't endeavor that, but I'm really glad to be here now and to share this with you. So without further ado, what I'd love to do is just share the stories. And please feel free to, Rev Mark's going to moderate, but feel free to ask questions and stop. Um, and then I'll also leave some time at the end. So how does that sound, everybody? Is that good? Everything cool? All right, great.
It sounds great to me, and I'm wondering whether, before everybody else joined us, you told us about all the hours of the airplanes.
Yes, it was a 30. All right, I'll begin before I even show you that it was a 30. It began with a 36-hour journey on October 31st, 5 airplanes. My traveling partner was trying to use some miles, and I will never go cheaply like that again into the night, because my return flight was 24 hours, and that was just plenty for me. So I would do it differently next time for sure. And so, well, let's get started. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was really fun for me to put this together last night. Let me just get it in the slideshow.
All right, so while you're working on getting on the slideshow, did you call this Yael's excellent adventure because I did on the email blast?
Did you know I actually started this prior to that, so we were on the same wavelength? I have to, how could we not call it the most excellent adventure? So here, Kia ora, which is Maori for welcome or thank you. It means a lot of things. It's kind of like shalom in certain ways. And so whenever anybody greets you, it's like kia ora, kia ora. So I want to tell you it was a 3 month journey. It started on October 31st. New Zealand's a day ahead, so I lost a day and gained a day back when I came back, and I came back on January 25th. So here we go. This is a picture of a very on the left here, a traditional. There were a lot of natural places, particularly in the South Island, that just looked like you were in Jurassic Park, just the fronds and the huge trees and the spiny trees. And these fronds were everywhere, and fiddleheads, and they're often associated with the country of New Zealand. And as you can imagine, sheep are associated with New Zealand. There was lots and lots of sheep. And these are, and we'll see in a minute, traditional Maori gathering carvings on a gathering house. So a meeting house.
Yael, if I could interrupt for a moment, the
Yes.
very first time, go back to the fiddlehead. The very first time I was in Nova Scotia with my friend Bobby, and when we were in college, we're driving around, and I see a sign, and it said "Fiddleheads ahead." And I'm a musician. What's the first thing I think of?
Oh,
There's what? Okay, fiddlehead. Really? It's only when we came to the second and third and fourth and fifth sign that I went, wait. I don't think they're selling musical
there's
instruments.
something else going on here. Well, mm, a lot of people make soup from fiddleheads. It's fiddlehead soup. So I've learned that too. I did not have the chance to try, and nobody offered me any of that, but people are making food from the fiddleheads. So yeah. So New Zealand, you can't talk about New Zealand without talking about Maori culture. And what I really in one thing that was super interesting is it doesn't matter whether it's a governmental office or a music event. Everybody opens with a Maori prayer it's in the Maori language. And even if you're a white person and you are, giving thanks for everything, including your connection to the ancestors. And this is a, uh, this is all in the South Island. I've started on the South Island, and the on the right you can see the Maori meeting house. Now all the WHs are pronounced like an F, so it's Fahanui, right? So you might take pleasure in my pleasure when I kept saying Fatawak, But that's just me. So anyhow, the Whanui is also the main building of the marae, which is a sacred meeting ground. So there's so much emphasis or on the indigenous culture of the Maori people, and unfortunately, there's now a very strong conservative government in there that's reversing a lot of things, including the treaty that was made. And so there's been lots of demonstrations, but nonetheless, it's still a really robust dual culture that way. And the carvings depict the tribe's connections to their ancestors. And even at the top of the house, you'll notice a sculpture, and we're told that that's representative of the explorer, the chief who came from Polynesia and to start settling the New Zealand. So just to give you an idea of New Zealand, this is New Zealand all the way down here, and this is Australia. That's how big Australia is compared to New Zealand. There's a North Island and a South Island separated by the Cook Strait. And so now we're going to now just look at a map of the South Island. So I landed on the North Island. You kind of landed in Auckland and then took a plane to Christchurch, which I don't have my glasses, but it's somewhere around here. And then uh, the day after traveling 36 hours, like literally woke up the next morning and got on this train to go across the country to the other side, which I learned from that I would take a few days of rest before I do anything again. So I'm going to take us down a journey. We ended up going down to the south part of the island very quickly. So I just wanted to orient you into where I was. So here's me, a puddle on the train, but nonetheless, that's my view. These are the Southern Alps. And this is the beginning, late spring or early summer in New Zealand. So the flowers were just starting to come out. And we had this bird's eye view of this 4 hour train ride. It only took 4 hours. That's how small the country is to get to the other side. And then we stayed overnight and, just chilled out, went to the Tasman Sea and said, hello, Australia, and then got back on the train the next day. So that was the beginning of our journey. It was a wonderful, lovely experience, very relaxing and chill.
You can see Australia?
No, you just kind of wave at it because the next stop when you're from looking at the Tasman Sea from Greymouth. So here, I'll show you. Oops,
Yeah.
right here. Here is Greymouth, and this is the Tasman Sea right here.
Oh,
So, and
okay.
then News and that there's nothing else there except for Australia out there. So, but you
Okay.
can't see Australia, that's for sure. So then, so we took then a plane from Christchurch all the way down here to this little, well, it's not too little, but it's a kind of a smallish city called Invercargill. And as most New Zealanders would say, it's a great place to get a rental car and just leave. And then we proceeded to Riverton. And actually, the trip was really based around Riverton because Riverton is this little teeny beach community that boasts a very strong environmental center, and this couple who kind of have stewarded a whole food forest movement on your private property. So they had 2 acres of property that was all in disrepair, and over the last 15 or 20 years, there's everything from fruit trees to edible plants, and it's this wonderful ecology, and it's another way of doing regenerative uh, ecology. And we, in 3 months in advance, got tickets to walk around their farm. And so that's how we ended up in Riverton. And so this was across the street from our Airbnb was the beach. This is just a little bit high up, and we just walked down. This is me enjoying driving on the other side of the road. It felt like a video game. It was terrifying a little bit at first, but it was really fun. And all I can say is, those sounds that the car makes when you touch the line in the middle of the lanes and it goes beep, beep, beep. Well, it was really good that that was on because, of course, we kept going towards the curb on the left, and there was lots of times saying curb, 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 and then we would, straighten it out. But we got really good at it, and it was really fun. As I mentioned, and especially on the South Island, it was like the green it was such, now you guys on the East Coast can't imagine. I mean, you see some green. I'm in New Mexico, and the green was like a balm to my soul. Just, it was so stunning everywhere you look. The South Island's very different than the North Island. And there's sheep everywhere, most of them newly shorn. But they all had their babies because it was the springtime and going into summer. So it was really sweet. And these flowers, these yellow flowers, which I can't remember the names of them, they had the most intoxicating smell. You just be walking and you're looking around and saying, "What is that?" And they were everywhere, everywhere, all across the southern island. Now, your election day, we had election day the day after, so we were watching the elections or kind of towards the end of it. And when I saw what was happening, I said, I just got a new T-Mobile account and they gave me Apple TV. I'm going to turn on Ted Lasso. I'm going to watch Ted Lasso. And I watched the very first episode of Ted Lasso. And that turned into like a 3-season Ted Lasso binge that really it only took a week to do. And I was very grateful for Ted Lasso during that time. So then we traveled from Riverton about 3 hours. Now, it doesn't look like it would take you that long, but all the roads are single roads, especially on the South Island. And if somebody slow is going in front of you or if there's traffic, it can really slow things down. But they very smartly have pull-out areas so you can pull over and let people who want to go faster go by. Um, and so we went up to here to this Lake Manapouri, which was the gateway to this whole area called Fiordland. That was the who was the director for the Lord of the Rings again, whatever his name is. He took a boat ride here and created a lot of Lord of the Rings based on what he saw. It's a pristine area, it's set aside, and there's just all these little waterways through these just cut out cavern walls, which you'll soon see. So we went to Doubtful Sound, and so we went to Lake Manapouri, got on an hour and a half ferry. That's how big Lake Manapouri is, and then got on a bus for an hour. And this was the view from the bus. We started seeing all these little white things. Those are all waterfalls, all waterfalls. And then we got on this boat, and there was only 12 passengers, which was great. And it was an overnight journey. It was a 24-hour total. And we saw penguins, and these are just kind of sample views. And then we parked by this waterfall overnight, and that's what you heard at night. And we went kayaking, and we caught lobsters, and there was fishing. And so it was a really amazing journey. And it was just, you know, you're mostly in silence because you're just in jaw-dropping awe. Like there's nothing, you don't want to say anything. It's just was wonderful, wonderful experience. Highly worth it. So from there, we went to Queenstown. Queenstown, New Zealand itself, but Queenstown is this way. And Queenstown is kind of home. It's kind of like Aspen, Colorado, but it's home to a very big center of all the like adrenaline stuff, like bungee jumping and alpine over here and speedboats that go really fast and anything that can probably kill you, they do there, and people pay money to do it. Um, I was working during this, so the first week I had off, and so I've learned really well how to work and travel at the same time. I'd never known how to really do that. The in-person clients went on Zoom. The rest of my clients were already on Zoom. So I parked for 5 days right outside of Queenstown along a little river, and got in on a Monday. I went food shopping, had clients Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday left and went somewhere else. So it worked out really, really well. Again, you just like walk outside your door and you just look around and there's just mountains and it's just beautiful. You don't have to really even do anything, but I did go hiking. I walked along the river and all kinds of stuff that way. So we went up to Queenstown and then we came back down. I think we came down around this way. And of course, all of this, even though it's white, it's just stunning. It's just stunning, stunning. And then we ended up we came back down and this section from about this one, or I think that's a one, all the way to about here to Bluff is something called the Catlins, and it's another nature preserve that only usually locals go, and it's very remote. And anywhere I had an opportunity to rent an Airbnb that was either within view and like 30 meters, well, like 30 meters was pretty much the maximum to get to the beach because I wanted to be on the beach as much as I could. So, um, I'm going to come back to this for a second. Oops. I'm going to say there's more sheep, but I want to talk about the Catlins for a second. So this right here is the view from, it was a tiny house, and you open the door and literally there's the beach. And so I've walked up and down the beach, and then penguins would come in at night on the other side of the beach, but it got so dark you couldn't see them. So I looked for a few nights, but I couldn't see them. And then one afternoon, this seal, like, and there's all this grass here, and I didn't know that these sea lions would sleep in the grass. I was just moseying on through the grass, and they're gigantic, and they're gigantic. And so this is about, I don't know, 40 feet away. And then we're just watching it. And then it decides it's a, "Arr!" And then it starts moving closer, and it's like flapping these big, and it kind of like walks and drags its butt, walks and drags its butt. So then it gets closer. So then I go on my porch and then it starts coming up the front yard. And I was like, are we okay? And then it took a turn up a road, up a driveway, and just parked itself for the night in the neighbor's garden. And that's apparently what happens. So it was just so much wildlife that's right, just living in tandem with it was beautiful. Um, by the way, I didn't bring my winter coat, right? Because I chose this time because it's the late spring into the summer. And I don't think it got over 55 or 58 degrees most of the time, either South or North Island, maybe a little bit in the north. But anyhow, the weather in the Catlins, kind of like most island places, it went from blue sky to this sky to hailing to sun. So you just, throw in your raincoat. I bought some hats and scarves, and I was good to go. So I want to go back to the Tui. Don't play yet, Tui. So when I was in Queenstown walking along that river, I was just minding my own business before work, and I see this in a tree. And I stop, I'm like, what the hell is that? Why does a bird have cotton balls on it? How is the entire bird iridescent? And then it started making a sound of all these different sounds. It was just somebody's house sitting outside its tree. And I was just gobstruck. And the entire rest of my trip, for the entire rest of the 3 months, just I was in love with the tui. And everywhere I went, and it's a very popular, populous bird, but I just was finding them everywhere. And they have a very unique sound. So I just wanted to play it.
So we're not hearing the
You have
sound.
to share sound. You have to hit share sound on your screen.
Oh, how do I do that?
If you pull out of the screen share and then you go back to hit start screen share, and when you hit it at the bottom of that screen, there should be a thing that says share sound.
Yes. Sorry, guys. Thank you. Okay, great. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Let's see if it does that. Can you hear it now?
A little tiny bit, I thought, but maybe not.
Okay, bummer.
Yeah.
Can you put on original sounds for
Yeah,
musicians
maybe you
that
need to put
already
on a
are?
musician
Oh, wait,
sound.
it's on. No, it's on mute. Put on what sound?
Original sound, which is up top on the right.
Stop a second. Top on the right of where?
If you
Um,
have it as an option, you may
If you have
not.
it as an option, yeah.
in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, at the top of the Zoom thing, it might say original sound for musicians off. I don't think, unless, can you hear it when you played it just now?
I can.
So we could hear it through your mic we might be able to hear it through your mic if you hit, okay, go to the, at the bottom left, go to the microphone, and there's a little upside down caret next to the microphone. Click that.
Yep.
At that menu, it says audio settings. Go to audio settings.
Yes.
And under audio profile,
Uh-huh. Put it
it's
on high.
put it on, no, under audio profile, scroll down under where it says microphone, it'll say audio profile
Yep, I see it.
and click original sound for musicians.
Okay, got it. And it
Click
has
that.
okay,
And
it says
then
echo cancellation is checked. Should I keep that checked?
it doesn't matter. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Is that it?
That's all you have to do. Now go out of that and come back to your main screen. And in the upper right-hand corner at the top, it should say original sound for musicians. And then it'll either say on or off, and you
I
can
just
toggle it.
got it.
Okay.
I just put it on.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. I know. You got to hear
Let's
the
hear the
tui.
tui now.
Let's hear the tui. Okay, let me try again. It sounds like R2D2 is in the tree.
I
That's
was
awesome.
just thinking that.
Yeah, and it's just amazing. So every time I heard a two, I'd stop and where a lot of times where I was had whatever room I was in where I had my computer set up for Zoom, the windows were open and there's usually bushes or trees, so I'd hear flutters of wings sometimes behind me in the open window, and then I'd hear the tui singing as I'm with my therapy clients, and it was really fun. I got a lot of tui. It was really great.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
good.
Elle, if
Yes.
you're not going to play us any more sounds, you may want to go up to that toggle switch at the upper right and turn original sound off.
There's one more video, so let's see, and then after
You
that, I'll
can
turn it
you
off.
can click it off until you get to the video and then just click it on for that because we hear like the motor of your computer and stuff behind you when it's on.
Got it. Great. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, great. Okay, so we did Jack's Bay, and so I just basically like we stayed around, say here's Jack's Bay. Oh yeah, we just went to Papawai and Oaxaca. Like we just started just driving along the coast and we got down to Curio Bay, and that's where we're gonna go next. And Curio Bay is the southernmost point of New Zealand. And more rainforests, more waterfalls to climb up to. And what I also enjoy is that New Zealand isn't litigious like the United States. So, you're walking along things, there's no rails, you're climbing upstairs, you know, you fall, sorry, and that's the way it goes. So you have to be a little careful, but it was really nice to not have to have unobstructed views. But one of the cool things was that in all of the rock on Curio Beach were all these fossilized trees. You'd see these huge logs, and they're dated from the Jurassic period. And I was walking around all the sea debris and just the water and stuff. And then I stumbled upon uh I stumbled upon this fossil here. And I'm like, wow, I've never found a fossil before. And bonus points for anybody who's ever seen the Brady Bunch and knows why I didn't take the fossil home with me. Who has the bonus points? I'm just slightly too young for you guys to remember that. In the Brady Bunch, they went to Hawaii and they
Didn't
took
they
home.
get arrested for taking something home or
Oh,
something
they
from the
took
national?
home Marsha or one of them brought home a piece of the lava from the Mauna Lea, which everybody says like you'll have bad luck if you take anything. And they took it back and they had all this bad luck and then they mailed it back and their bad luck was over. So I learned from the Brady Bunch and did not take the fossil. Just want to say.
I don't want to interrupt your story, but the national parks have started that as a thing to keep people from removing
I
art.
know. It's a great thing. They should continue it. They should continue it more. They should make even better stories up. Okay, so then we went to Dunedin, which I'll flip back a little bit to the map. So we were down in Curio Bay. We went back to Jack's place, and then we just made about an hour drive to Dunedin. So there's Christchurch and Dunedin on the South Island that are the two big cities. There's one other one at the very top called Nelson, but these two have airports. And Dunedin was settled by Scottish folk. And so there's a lot of Scottish influence, but there's of course a lot of Asian influences. There's it's a wonderful, small, very walkable city. There's a big university there. The university students steal all the street signs, we find out, because we were trying to find Google Maps somewhere and we kept getting lost. Where are all the street signs? It's because the university students every year steal them, and then when they leave, they put the street signs back from their dorm rooms, and then it gets stolen again. So, how could I eat freshly baked bread at every cafe that's ever there and scones and all of the pastry filled everythings that they always there's just cafes, cafes, cafes from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Nothing else is open until about 5 or 6. And they have these little clear cabinets like you'd see in a deli with their offerings. There's usually a frittata out of the dish, a pastry encased sausage roll, a meat pie or a vegetarian pie, like pastry after pastry. It was very hard for a hypoglycemic who needs a lot of protein to find things. I mean, it was good food, but I like having this much meat and maybe this much bread, and they put this much bread and like a slice of meat. So just figuring some things out in a different culture, it was fine. So this street on the left is in Dunedin, the steepest street in the world. We stayed at an Airbnb that was on top of one of these high streets, and you could see the harbor and everything else, the mountains. But I don't know because all of their streets look they when you're walking up them are the steepest streets in the world to you. And there's just stairs after stairs after stairs after stairs. But we were in Dunedin for a while working, and so we were there for a couple of weeks. So I joined the community gym, which was fun, and walked there. It took about a half an hour up all those steps, so I didn't have to do the bike. So you got a lot of good exercise when you're in Dunedin, but you also were pretty circumspect about, do I really need to go out and get that right now? Or maybe I'll just be okay because I don't know if I feel like walking. Um, the other thing about Dunedin is it has all this kind of like Scottish castle vibe going. That's literally a boys' middle school on the top left, the gray. And then that's their railway station, and with beautiful horticulture, cut bushes and stuff like that. It was Christmas time, and so that's, I think, Merry Christmas in Maori. And New Zealanders, this exit funeral home is just an example of the dry sense of humor that most people in New Zealand have. I thought it was pretty funny to name a funeral home Exit, so I just took a picture of that. And Dunedin was my first stop on my Jewish journey in New Zealand, where I attended synagogue services with the same, reform Siddur that when I do my in-person services here. This is one of the oldest. This is the oldest synagogue in New Zealand. It's been around for well over 100 years. And it was lay-led by two lovely young women, and they only now have services once a month. But because it's a university town, there was a lot of Israelis there who are professors, and and one of the young women who led it was a professional chef. So there was about 8 different kinds of challah, and I was very happy. It was very good, and it was very sweet because they did a great job lay leading, but they also it's like a game of telephone, right? Like um when people who aren't exactly trained then do different things, they're just calling and pulling and doing what feels right in their hearts, and that was beautiful. And then when they sang certain sections that like belong in Yom Kippur or other sections that belonged here, and it was just I just was like, "Aw, okay, I can be sealed in the book of life again." You know what I mean? Even though it's, November. And so it was very sweet and very communal, and everybody was very lovely. And in fact, two of my very good friends from Santa Fe, one of them is from Dunedin, and she happened to be there in November. So we made our trips coincide. So they went to services with us. We had Thanksgiving with them. So that was a real treat to have that kind of connection as well. So just about 20 minutes away from Dunedin, just down the road, is a little section that's more on the water called Pudding Island. And this view, literally in the middle, is my view from my living room. And that's Pudding Island. Apparently, it looks like apparently an English pudding upside down, I was told. And And that's just a funny picture of me constantly trying to figure out the lockbox and never learning that I should put my glasses on. And everywhere you look, like I just went for a walk on a windy beach and there's, sea lions and you don't really want to get too close, even though they look like they're fine. They can jump up and move in a second, I was told. So I was very, you want to be respectful, and so I was, and it was just beach after beach after beach. What can I say? I did a lot of beach walking and it was gorgeous. I didn't go in besides my knees a lot of these South Island ones. It was still a little too cold, but in North Island I did go in the water. So then, reason why I go to Pudding Island is because I was in New Zealand 25 years ago, and I didn't know, I just kind of went there on a lark. I didn't know the seasons were inverted, and it was just too cold. It arrived in winter. And so I didn't get to the south part of the South Island where these penguins are supposed to be, these blue penguins. And I was like, oh my God, I have to go see the blue penguins. So got on a little tour bus with 6 people, and they took us to the Otago Peninsula, which is a preserve now. I want to say that when the Europeans came, they brought with them possums and rats and stoats, which are like little, um, like kind of guinea piggy kind of which eat bird eggs. So they started decimating the natural bird population. And so for the last however many years, there's traps everywhere. There's like kind of rat motels and possum motels. They've killed millions of possums, and possums are actually possum fur are a huge industry in making hats and gloves, along with sheep merino wool at the same time. And so this was a seagull sanctuary, and here's a baby chick and her egg, and there was this doesn't really tell you the racket that thousands of seagulls make, and it was all overlooking this kind of cliff and this beautiful water, just another standard kind of beautiful view in New Zealand. But then there was the penguins. Okay, so now I want to tell you, you have to wait until dark. I don't have a winter coat. I thought I was going into summer. So I have a sweatshirt and a raincoat and my enthusiasm. And everybody else had big puffy jackets because they had gotten the memo, but I didn't. So it was kind of cold. But so we watched the sunset, and I got to tell you, highlight moment of my life. So a group of penguins is called a raft. And so it's dark out. They have one spotlight. They've been doing this for years. They're not bothered by it. All around us are baby chicks and some mamas taking care of them. And so they go out in the morning and they come back at night after feeding and bringing stuff back. And all of a sudden, out of the gloom comes on the left this first group of penguins. And over the entire evening of maybe 2 or 3 hours, there was 300 penguins that came in. And then they kind of waddle up in this second picture, and you're just, I mean, my traveling companion said over the 50 people who were chattering away and talking about it, all of a sudden he just heard me laugh. And like, it was just that pure joy of like, it was just pure joy. And so you could get, you're just looking down, you're standing on a platform. And again, they're really used to the light. So it's not a lot of light, and it's a big research institution. Everything you give to the tour, it goes to that kind of thing. And it was just absolutely delightful. And so here is another video. Let me get out. Let me turn on. Look, I'm a pro now. So this is an example of what I saw of them kind of waddling up the path on the side of the platform to get to their chick houses.
Oh my gosh.
Burgess Meredith.
And they make these little sounds. You can't quite hear it here. They're like, they just make these cute little sounds. And they're just dispersing, and so over the course of the evening, seeing 300 of these. Oh my gosh. And the sound of the sea and everything else. So, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Let me stop share and turn that sound off again. So, yeah, it was really like satisfying, that's for sure. And so they're called Korora, the little blue penguin, the world's smallest penguins. And so, yeah. Okay, so a little bit more of just there's artwork and murals all over on sides of buildings and stuff like that. This was really neat. This was a poem written by a Maori poet, and it was along this huge scaffolding along a building. There's about 14 panels that were about 8 feet long, really big. And but so they put parts of the words of the poem along these incredible graphics. And so I just gave you three of them of words that I actually appreciated as the poet in me of like respecting the lattice work of a bruise and the deliciousness of kissing and the quiet rustling of leaves. And, it was very satisfying to me to look at that. And yeah, so, okay, so then from Dunedin, took a plane to the North Island and Auckland, the main major city, although Wellington is the capital, but is a big city, a big major city. And there met up with my traveling companion's family, and we went, drove a couple days later to, how do we pronounce that? Whitianga. And right along the coast here, it's also known as Coromandel, which is the European name for it, and Whitianga is the Maori name for it. And one of the beaches we went to was the hot water beach. And you literally, so there's like a hot spring under the entire beach. So if you just sit on the sand, your tush gets warmed. But then people take these shovels and they start digging, they dig holes. Like there were holes everywhere. And people just like sit in them like hot tubs right on the water. And it's really great. And the water's very hot. Like it can be scalding sometimes. And then you jump in the water and you come back. Um, Although the riptide in a lot of these beaches is insane, and I didn't want to go to Australia that way, so I decided to be careful sometimes about that. And this is just a sampling of some of the lusciousness of flowers everywhere. And in particular, this tree, I'm gonna bat, is called the Christmas tree. And it's the Pohutukawa tree. And see these people, look how big this tree is. And they're not all that big. And they have these red, like bristly flowers that only come out at Christmas time, mostly on the North Island. So you saw them everywhere in the season. Really beautiful. Again, a sight, just a sensorial enjoyment everywhere you go. And then I stayed in Auckland for a couple of weeks on my own. Really interesting. I found this solo female travelers group called Her House, this grassroots organization started by a young woman who traveled around the world for a year and said women need a safe place to land and, where people can help get them situated until they're going off on their other adventures. And so I signed on like 2 years ago. And so everybody's background checked. And so this particular woman and her husband, they're like, you could stay for 6 weeks if you want. Like they had a bedroom, they had a bathroom. I worked 3 days a week. And on the weekends, all along the coast here, you can't tell, are just island after island after island. And Auckland is a huge port city. So this is Auckland. This is my host, Ellen. This is she and her husband, Jordan. They're originally from Colorado, which is really funny. And I knew Ellen and I were going to be fast friends because while we were waiting for our takeout, I said, you want to get gelato? She's like, I've had ice cream before dinner before. And I said, oh my God, I like you so much. And there's just lovely parks and palm trees. There's tons of cricket matches going on. Here's more street art. And I was wandering one day and I walked through this park and I see this whole like booths and music and all this great stuff. And everybody's got like cupcakes and brownies and all these other things. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get a cupcake. And then I'm like, what's that smell? And then I walk and it's an entire festival dedicated to legalizing marijuana and everything you can imagine. It was awesome. And I was like, I'm new in the city and I don't usually do that. And I'm like, I think I'm gonna pass, although it's very tempting just for the experience, but I decided to keep it good and it was a really funny experience. So they're trying to legalize marijuana basically, and there's all this political movement on that. Um, the other thing is we're surrounded by these volcanic islands. Now, there's a lot of companies where you can kayak across the open sea to the islands. It's about an hour-long kayak trip, steady paddling out there. Um, you can see the top of the volcano of that island. It's not extinct. It's not active right now, but it's not extinct. And here is my second stop on my Jewish journey. Again, they call themselves, everybody so far who's Reform, they call it progressive Judaism. And so, and just so you know, to get into any, not Dunedin, but to get into the Auckland Synagogue and the Wellington Synagogue, I contacted them months ahead. They wanted to know they wanted a copy of my passport, a copy of my driver's license. They wanted to know my social media accounts. They wanted to know my full name and they were very strict. Um, and but every time that I showed up in Auckland, they said, would you light the candles for us? Would you do Kaddish for us? So they were just always very warm and welcoming. It was a very sweet community. And I went out to dinner with them afterwards and got the lowdown on being Jewish in Auckland. These people have been there for, these Jewish folks have been there for have arrived as immigrants, their families a long while ago. And so they talked a lot. It was very interesting to hear about what it's like to be Jewish in a country that most people I've met have never met a Jewish person in their life before. So that was an interesting experience, to say the least, as you can imagine. So I love ferry rides. I love being on boats. So I hopped on a ferry and went to this bird sanctuary island. It's an hour and a half ferry ride and you'd have to bring everything. There was nothing there. And it was an island that used to be owned, but it's called Rotorua, not to be confused with Rotorua, which is a city in North Island. And it was owned for 100 years by the Salvation Army as a sustainable, self-sustainable, off the grid healing sanctuary for men who are alcoholics. And it was very successful. And it wasn't until like 2006 that this bird sanctuary like bought it from them. So they were like, that was a thing for almost 100 years. They had some women, but mostly men. And shocker, they didn't want to leave. Why would they want to leave paradise, right? And so now it's a bird sanctuary, and they've successfully gotten rid of the majority of the possum, stoat, rats, but they have these rodent motels, so you don't want to touch them. And um, this is the skyline of Auckland from the boat as you're moving away from it. That's a big, huge tower that people like to go bungee jumping from, like really, really tall. Um, this is just like one example. I mean, I had so many pictures, right, of boats you pass by, different islands. And this is just another example of some of the many, there's like the whole, you follow all these walking trails. I walked for like 4 hours. It was warm. It's much warmer up there than on the South Island. And then you just walk down. There's a beach if you want to like go swimming or whatever. There were fine beaches to swim in, and dipped in a few, and just gorgeous. Now, this Weka bird down here, it looks smaller than it is. It's about this big, and it's got a long beak, so it looks almost like the traditional kiwi, which only comes out at night, apparently. But they're like the Prius of birds because I was alone on trails most of the day because there weren't that many people on the island. And then all of a sudden I look behind me and there's like two or three of these huge birds literally on my heels. And then I turn and they start squawking at me and I'm like, you scared me. Like, what's your problem? They just would sneak up on me all the time. But they had some babies, I think, because it was that season. And this is a kaka. This is a native parrot. Again, it's about this big and about that round. It's an imposing bird and an ungainly bird. It kind of can't stay on the branches too much. It weighs a lot and stuff like that. And these are the swamp hens. Now, this left one was my picture because I couldn't get close enough before it scampered off. And this left one is from the internet, which shows you kind of the interesting colorations of it. And it's a very popular, common bird. And then the following weekend, after working all week, I went to Wahiki Island, and that was not very far. This is an island that used to be a whole like hippy dippy place, but then all the wineries moved in. So a lot of people go for their wine tours, like 30 wineries. A lot of the New Zealand wine comes from Wahiki Island. I don't care about wine. I don't drink. It's not a big deal, but you can rent an e-bike and ride around the island, and it's about a 15-mile ride. And I'm like, okay, I haven't ridden in a while, but that should be fine. I'd never done an e-bike before. I learned several things that an e-bike is great and it does assist you, but you still have to pedal. And just like there's hills in Dunedin, there's hills everywhere. I'm talking hills that last a long, long time. So even though I had an e-bike, I had to stop a lot. Now, one of the very interesting things that happened for me on Wahiki Island is that, the South Island was like bam, bam, moving, on the go, adventure, adventure, adventure. And when you're moving around like that, it was actually wonderful and so strenuous. I hadn't packed well, and I packed a little too much to be doing that so often. So when I got to Auckland, I was in one place. I kind of got to settle down. And so when I settled down, I started feeling emotions a little bit more. And what I noticed on Wahiki Island, you have a map. They give you a map on your phone. You can check in a map. And I have very good intuitive direction. I have good sense of direction. And I don't know if it's because things go in the opposite direction there or not. I kept getting lost. I could have sworn it was a left and it was the right. And guess what? I'd end up at the bottom of another freaking hill. I'm like, I've been here before. I mean, this is supposed to be a 15-mile ride. It was a lot longer for me. And at one point, I just pulled over, and the trucks are passing me this close to my elbows on some of the roads. The street signs are not there. The street signs that are there, instead of like, if they're pointing this way, it really means you should go that way instead of, it was so confusing. And at one point, I just pulled over and I'm like, I just need to cry. I just cried, and then I got it over. And then this was one of there's like 15 beaches you can stop at. This is the longest one. It's a 3-kilometer beach, really lovely. And this is one of those beautiful purple flowers just in that bud. And that's kind of what it felt like for me. I felt like I was in that bud. What the Airbnb did not tell me in their description, I decided to stay overnight, was that it was a 15 or 20-minute walk to the Airbnb. So I'm standing at this crossroads with the signs, and I'm like, one goes down a hill and one goes this way. And I'm like, I look at my phone. I think I'm doing the right thing. I walk, I walk, I walk, and I'm at the bottom of like a mile-long hill. And I'm like, son of a, I had to go back up the hill. Now you have to imagine I brought so many belongings. I had a 20-pound pack on me. Like I had a lot of stuff in my pack. So I trudge up the hill, and then I finally get to the street and the Airbnb. This top picture is their driveway. I I was halfway up. If I leaned backwards, I would have fallen. That's how steep it was. Now, I've now walked 20 minutes and I'm in the middle of nowhere. It's 4 o'clock and I'm like, I'm not eating. I'm not going anywhere. I can't even begin. Where would I even go to eat? I'm going to have my granola bar. So I rested and then I walked back down. The reason I chose this Airbnb is because right next to down the bottom is this beautiful little bay, very rocky, just like a bathtub of peace and calm. And so I went swimming there at night, and that was my first night in Wahiki Island. And then I saw this sign, and so now I turned my bike in a while, yesterday. And so now I'm at these beaches, and so here's the ferry over here on this map, and I'm right here. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna walk the 3 hours back to the ferry, and I'm gonna stop at all these beaches along the way. And I proceeded to go down lots and lots and lots of stairs and have to go back up them again. But I made it to several like, look at this is just a standard view. These are standard views, and this is me saying I finally made it to the beach by the ferry. I went in the water. I was a happy camper, and that was Waiheke Island. But now to some of the deeply internal parts, like on the left here. when I was after I climbed up that steep hill and I took a shower and I sat down and like said, "Okay, I'm finally here." I said, "Okay, why do you keep going in the wrong direction? What's happening here?" And I'm like, "Something else is happening here." And I was like, "Oh dear. This is happening in my life." Shit. So, these were my questions to myself that I'm still reflecting upon. This was my Wahiki Island gift. And this is a poem that you can just, I'll read it to you, that I wrote on the ferry home. Um, Let me move the. Under the fuss and fluff of Wahiki Island, pretty people wine and dine in sweeping vineyards. As I trudge up hills and buzzes whiz by my elbow, and I hear the birds, the tui, find me now. And in their songs, I glean their ancient stories, before Europeans, before Polynesians, when the moa roamed free and parrots called their secrets from tree to tree, and the islands crooned and arose from fiery bursts of earth's passion, kissing the sky with verdant color, blossoming in the sun's shadows, life finding itself afloat, like my dreams, burning brightly in the full moon and the fullness of time.
Mm.
More street art, but these are some of the ones I chose because like the Don't Panic, they just kind of appeared whenever I needed them. Or the Slow Down You're Here, that was on Waiheke Island and that made me laugh. These two here, I was on a wooded trail deep in the woods, and somebody along the way had put lots and lots of messages. This one is written in the Maori language, and then it says, "You are amazing. Yes, you reading this, you are the sunrise." And
Aw.
so I just really, and then before you ask which way to go, what does that one say? Remember where you've been. So those were all just sweet little messages. My host Ellen took me again, Auckland, even though Auckland just spanned like hundreds of miles, it just went from this big city to the islands to now these black sand beaches. This took us 45 minutes to get here. Climbed up stairs, 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 got to top, literally sat on the top of waterfalls, which are right here. This is us at the bottom. This is like a movie, a scene from a movie. There's eels in the water that are really interesting. They're docile, but you don't want to stick your finger out. Um, and here's some of the views from the on the top of the black sand beach. This is on the black sand beach. The riptide. The reason it's called the Bay of Boisterous Seas in the Maori language is because notice how many people are wearing life jackets and their feet are just in the surf. Like I was standing even further back from that surf and my feet were on the sand and the tide came in and it all of a sudden went all the way up to my chest and then almost sucked me out. And I was like, this is actually, yeah. So it's the nature is beautiful and it's real and you just have to pay attention. So it was just gorgeous. Um, Went to a little bit further in between Auckland and Wellington to Ohakune, which means an opening to a new world. Our Airbnb was under the lee of this Mount Ruapehu, which is actually an active volcano that has erupted recently. And it was during the time of Hanukkah. I was staying with a family who, again, didn't know anything about Judaism, with two younger children, a 14 and a 10-year-old, who everybody was so into it. It was really lovely and inclusive. And I had a travel menorah that the inspection guy, when I was leaving New Zealand, it flagged the security, and he held it was folded up and it was wrapped in aluminum foil, and he's like, "What's this?" And I said, "It's for Hanukkah." And he goes, "What's a Hanukkah?" I said, "It's a menorah." And he goes, "Ah, it's culturally significant to you." And I said, "Indeed it is." He goes, "Okay." And then he just let me go by. So. So then I went all the way down to Wellington and spent the last few weeks in Wellington. It's a port city. It's lovely. For my birthday, I went to a winery. You have to know I like might have 3 drinks in a year. So it was delicious. It's another Martinborough, another center where New Zealand wines are made and produced. The Wellington Chocolate Factory had a chocolate making day, so I went there. Um, I thought this sign was really funny because it reminds me of me. And went to this place called the Chasm where you walk through all this water and you're like the only person there. Like it's just outrageous. It's just you can't even believe it. And then I ended with Temple Sinai, again, progressive. And I led the drosh because it was Shemot. And as those of you know, I love Shemot. I love naming. So I had to give a drosh on naming. And it was very well received. And they were lovely people. And then finally I got home. But you know, New Mexico's not such a sham. The sandhill cranes with a 5-foot wingspan that come and roost, it's towards the end of it. There's thousands, tens of thousands of them. There's 20s and 30s and 50 thousands of the snow geese, and just about an hour and a half from my house. And look at the sunset. Look where I get to live. And so it ain't so bad here either. And so that is my New Zealand adventure.
Wow.
So I'd love to answer any questions you have or, share anything that you might want to talk about. We have another, 10 or 15 minutes. So lay it on me.
Well, I think it's just so cool that you were able to go for such an extended time, because even, I've been told that you need to take at least 3 weeks if you're going to go down there. But even that's then a rush, of course, with leaving out a lot of stuff. But the fact that you were able to work and see clients in between is incredible
Yeah.
and allowed you to make some money, stay in contact with your clients and all this while you were on vacation in between. That's really something you couldn't do that 15 years ago or 20 before Zoom.
No, I know everybody was, so delighted by it. The first time I would get on with a client, I'd be like, "Hi, I'm talking to you from your future. What do you want to know?" Because it was a day ahead. So yeah, it was a wonderful opportunity. And now if I do want to travel like that again, which I would like to visit other countries and work, I know how to do it now, so I feel really grateful for that. Yeah.
Did you
And
have to turn the camera upside down though, because you guys are in the southern hemisphere? Did that?
no, we didn't have to do that. But I'll
Okay.
tell you, it was a brain teaser. I had to make up a whole Excel document with the New Zealand time and New Mexico time and East Coast times to make sure I didn't mess up days. And
Oh, yeah.
I did very well. I still messed a few things up, but I did pretty darn well. Yeah. Yeah, 3 weeks is 3 weeks. 3 weeks is good. You know, it's just it's what you have, and I just wouldn't try to do too much in 3 weeks. Maybe stay to one area if you want, or if you love traveling all over the place here and day, then do it. It's you can't go wrong. There's like there's so many places I didn't get to see, and I totally already know where I'd go back to, and I'd go to a different place and explore there next. And there's just it's so rich to explore. You'll have a fantastic time.
Okay, Dan. So we go to New Zealand. We go to New Mexico first because that's closer. But then we go back to Iceland and explore what we didn't see. How's that?
There you go. There you go.
Another place with lots of lava.
I'm over Iceland. We go to New Zealand, Patagonia, and Silver Spring or Kensington. The
Okay, well then I'll go to Iceland with somebody else, okay?
okay, there you go.
Yeah, Roxanne has a question, and
Roxanne.
Mary asking a question in the chat, and then I have a question.
Excellent. Lay it on me.
I loved that exchange you had with the fellow who said, "Oh, this is culturally significant to you." I just love that. I was wondering if you remembered any of the stories that people told you about being someone's first Jew.
Well, so I'm at the dinner table with my friend's family and his and a best friend is there, and she's in her 50s, and we're all just talking, and she turns It's difficult. Look, I do have a very extroverted side, but I have a very introverted side. I'm very private and I can be very quiet. And it was not very welcome to me to, in the middle of a huge dinner party discussion, for this person loudly turn to me and saying, I never met a Jewish person before. What does that mean? And I had to bite my tongue to say something that would have been sarcastic. And so what happened was that kind of like all attention came to me, and so I just rolled with it and offered, what I could. And she was, well, I'm Christian. How does that work? And they were honest questions. And so and I'd say one of the other experiences that I thought was more fulfilling for me was when the 14-year-old was we were talking about something in the news, and he said, there's a guy in my class who's Jewish, and somebody came in with something about Nazis or whatever, and it started talking, and he goes, what's the big deal about all of that? And I'm like, oh, do you really want to talk about that? He said, yeah. And it was a really interesting conversation about Germany and the Holocaust and giving him some history and periodically saying, him asking a question, I'm saying, you should look that up. You should just look that up too. And so it was really nice, Roxanne, to touch bases with the Jewish communities. That felt really, when I started singing the same prayers and saying the same things, I was like, oh, thank God. Here, we're here. There's not many here, but we're all here and I'm part of it. And that felt great. Yeah. Which also shows me that wherever I go, if I find Jewish community that I can connect with, that, I can make a place my home. So yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm going to follow up on that, and then I'll ask you Mary's question. Maybe that'll be the last question, which is you are a long way from Israel, Palestine, Middle East. Did anybody bring that up at all? Was there any kind of
Yeah.
there was the question about in the school with the child, but with anybody else, was there any taste of it? Like, what is it like so far away?
The towns, the cities are plastered with posters that are pro-Palestinian. There was pro-Palestinian marches in Auckland that I've found myself in the middle of. I was just walking around. There were Palestinian flags in business windows. There were posters about Israelis killing babies. There was all of that stuff everywhere, everywhere I went throughout the North and this, mostly the North Island. Some of the South Island is much less populated, um, and much more rural. So it didn't encounter that as much as in the cities for sure. Christchurch on the South Island, and then all Auckland, Dunedin, you name it. Yeah. So, and I wasn't far from it because I was reading about it every day. I'm, in Times of Israel and keeping up with all of, what's happening. Yeah. And that's why the security is so tight. I mean, it's super tight. In the Wellington Synagogue, first of all, there's no, Dunedin, the synagogue was this building that was built 100 years ago. But in the other places, they just look somebody's house. You don't know there's a Jewish star, but it's on a door that's all the way down a driveway. And there's a big metal gate. And then to get into the metal gate, I had to pass several questions. To get into the door, I had to pass questions. And then people stay at the gate and stay there. And so the people in Auckland were, we talked openly about that. One of the gentlemen's son is he just went to, he now lives in somewhere in an Arabic country, but he's a television guy. And I'm like, what's he doing there? Like what's it, Abu Dhabi? I can't remember what's that town, that city.
Abu
And so,
Dhabi.
thank you. And so, we had long discussions about that, but I did not feel comfortable talking about that with anybody who wasn't Jewish. And so And 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 yeah, so anyhow,
Yeah, thank you. None of that surprises me.
yeah.
Mary wants to know, this might be a great last question. What made you want to go there?
So I went to New Zealand about 25 years ago when I happened to be, it was right after the um 9/11 happened, and um lots of stuff changed in my world. I was in New York. I would lived out there when it all happened. And so ended up selling my house, selling my stuff, and I was married at the time. And I ended up in New Zealand. And it was a fluke thing. It was for 5 weeks, Dan. And it was like, oh my God, this is like nothing. I have to come back. And so fast forward, and I'm in a relationship with a man whose two eldest daughters and his two grandsons live in Wellington, moved there about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit less. And so he's been going for the past few years there. And so I said, well, I'll go, but the first month I'm going to the South Island. I'm traveling. I'm not just going to hole up in Wellington and, I'm going to be traveling. And that's the kind of traveler I am anyway. I'd be like, we'll be working. And after at night, I'll be like, I saw the thing for the chasm. I'm like, that's just 2 hours away. We're going to that. Like, I got to do that, like, so that's how I like to travel. I like to have experiences. I like to involve myself in the community and also just really enjoy it. And so, I might go back again. I might not, with him, without him. I don't know. But, right now it was a great experience. And it was very challenging at times. So don't let all of the beauty also go like, it was challenging a lot of the times. It's challenging to be in another country. It's challenging to be away from everybody. It's challenging to move all the time. And I started getting used to it. So I also know that, you know, now I know how to do this, and it was a great experience. It was a great experience from that way too. So I would highly recommend it. It was a long flight over there, but coming back, it was only a 24-hour flight, and American did a great job. So if you just wear your compression socks or stockings, and speaking about getting gray, and bring your snacks, but they feed you really well, and just have your headphones and your book and your pillow, and it's over before you know it, and it's no problem, and you're there. So,
How was the food in New Zealand? Was it a lot of lamb and or
so yeah, they have I ate out some, but I like to cook for myself, and primarily also because I'm going to cook the food. Like I said, it was very carb bread oriented. I mean, it was kill like everywhere you go, everybody's making their own bread. It was just insane. Or scones or muffins or anything like that. But these cafes, they would serve basically they serve you bread, eggs, bacon, which is kind of ham and bacon to begin, a few mushrooms, a little spinach, and a stewed tomato. That's breakfast. And then there's just variations on that breakfast, or what they call muesli, which is basically raw oats and dried fruit and yogurt. But here's what I want to say. The dairy and the meat, if you eat meat, the worst of their dairy and the worst of their meat far surpasses the highest quality of our dairy and our meat. Everything is grass fed, everything is free range. I mean, so you can get a Dannon yogurt, but it's made with New Zealand milk. You can get Ben and Jerry's, it's made with, you can get an ice cream cone at McDonald's, and it's a real ice cream cone. It's not a fake ice cream cone. And so, but when you go to the supermarket, there's sausages. Like they love, I don't know how people aren't having heart attacks at 40. They eat sausages and sausages and more sausages. They have lots of meat. They have lamb. They have regular beef. They have some chicken. Chicken's very expensive. Salmon was 54 New Zealand dollars a pound, which if you knock, now the dollar's really good there. You knock 40% of that. That's still expensive. It's $30 a pound. So you'd think I ate fish twice in New Zealand, twice. I most of the time just but then the restaurants, they're amazing. Any kind of a Asian variation you can think of is there. It's a huge Asian population, huge Indian Asian population. So there's the cultures of Indian and all variety of Asian are there.
no Tex-Mex?
There was a few Mexican restaurants, but I don't need to go there. But yeah, so I had some again, like I had some and a lot of street food, which is outstanding street food. So yeah, and the people there are just lovely. They're so friendly. Anybody you run into from New Zealand, the first thing they say is, "Oh, you're American? Where'd you go in New Zealand?" And they just want to like hear all your adventures. And they'll end up inviting you over for dinner if you're not careful. Like that's the kind of people these are. Australians, I remember, were like that too. So there's just a lot. And as a woman, I felt so safe there. The cops don't carry guns. And yeah, there's some sections in Auckland or, whatever. But for the most part, for the first time maybe ever, I walked around by myself at night in a city and I felt good doing that. And I don't recall experiencing that too much before. So there's a lot on the social side that we haven't talked about
I'm sorry.
that was really
I'm
great. So
sorry, baby.
yeah. Anyhow,
Yael, thank you so much. Let's give it up for Yael.
thank
Yay.
you. Thank you.
I
Thanks
feel
for
like we've all lived vicariously through you for the past hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And it looks like Dan and Mary Reeder are going to be buying some real estate there, and we can all have our next Mosh retreat at their extended house
I will
somewhere
be there.
in New
And if
Zealand.
you guys, Dan and Marita, if you want to offline ask me any questions about places and all that, I'm happy to share whatever I know with you. Yeah.
Thank you.
That would be